Khamzat Chimaev wants to fight Alex Pereira. Who do you think will win, Chimaev or Pereira?
That is interesting. We haven't seen Pereira in there with an elite level wrestler, and many people tried to present Ankalaev that way. Don't forget, a lot of Chimaev's undefeated UFC record took place at 170 pounds.
I think Pereira, man, he will knock your face out.
All right, so get this. Khamzat Chimaev, Boris himself, absolutely stunned the entire MMA world. When he dropped a bombshell claim, he insisted, with unwavering conviction, that the legendary Alex Pereira, the man known as Poatan, was actively avoiding him. Chimaev made it abundantly clear that, from his perspective, the Brazilian champion wanted absolutely nothing to do with a potential high-stakes clash, setting off a firestorm of debate across the fighting community.
Everyone knows this guy is not my level. That's why he's running away. Why he accept the fight against disbelief? Why he not accept the fight against me? Got destroyed the guy 5 rounds, but he's saying like, I'm not.
Now, from Chimaev's intense perspective, his entire mission inside the UFC octagon has always been remarkably straightforward, almost brutally simple. He's never once tried to hide the undeniable fact that he wants to absolutely dominate any man who dares to stand across from him. He openly states he burst onto the scene in this organization with one goal: to overpower every single opponent put in front of him, to make a definitive statement. So, after he seized that coveted middleweight championship, he fully expected his road ahead to be paved with nothing but high-stakes, legacy-defining opportunities. And wouldn't you know it, one of the very first names he immediately targeted was Alex Pereira. In his mind, that matchup made not just sense, but perfect sense, a stylistic dream. It didn't even matter where it happened, whether it was at middleweight, light heavyweight, or even further up the scale. He saw it as a natural progression. What he definitely did not expect, at least according to him, was for Pereira to suddenly distance himself from the idea entirely. Chimaev has repeatedly explained, almost with exasperation, that he genuinely believes the newly crowned light heavyweight champion is actively avoiding him. At one point, he vividly recounted Pereira allegedly dismissing the matchup by claiming he was the bigger star and therefore didn't see any need to even entertain such a fight. Chimaev, understandably, simply couldn't comprehend how fame could be the ultimate determinant for matchups, especially in a sport where fighters ordinarily push for the biggest and toughest names available, seeking out the ultimate challenges. He seemed genuinely frustrated, almost personally offended, insisting that the sheer interest from fans, the eager anticipation from fellow fighters, and the powerful machinery of the UFC promotion itself should be more than enough reason for this monumental bout to happen.
Well, depreciation is good striker, one of the best strikers. Fight for me. Everyone knows that. UFC knows that, but UFC don't want to give this guy from me. I don't think so. He want that fight. It's gonna be not respect for Alex. He accept the fight. They're gonna pay good for Alex, you know. Like, one more fight, and I will go up next fight.
This whole unexpected standoff only escalated, only grew in intensity, when Chimaev decisively shifted gears from middleweight dominance and began talking, very publicly, about moving up in weight classes. And here's what's really interesting. Instead of adopting the usual champion's mentality, which would be to defend his newly won belt as his absolute first priority, he started openly entertaining much loftier, more ambitious goals. We all remember how he absolutely dismantled Dricus du Plessis, a truly dominant performance, to snatch the title at UFC 319. But what really shocked people was that he immediately, in the very next breath, mentioned Pereira's name. While the vast majority of champions traditionally choose to settle into their division first to solidify their reign, Chimaev seemed singularly determined to chase history, and he wanted to do it right away. He talked openly, with supreme confidence, about challenging himself in higher weight classes, thoroughly convinced that his elite wrestling prowess could completely neutralize Pereira's devastating striking, no matter what division they ended up fighting in. The mere idea made massive waves across the entire MMA world, and for good reason. Fans absolutely adore ambitious champions who aren't afraid to call out dangerous opponents, the ones who truly push the boundaries of the sport.
Speaking of call-outs, Khamzat's also been calling you out as well.
He's another one. There's a lot of options to look at. He's probably the last option. And it's the same thing. He's talking to, make some noise.
Meanwhile, while Chimaev was busy calling him out, Pereira himself appeared to be far more intrigued by an entirely different possibility. The idea of competing at heavyweight, instead of responding positively, or even acknowledging Chimaev's very direct call-out, Powhatan, decisively shifted his focus. He began publicly discussing a potential future matchup with none other than Jon Jones, the legendary Bones Jones, at a proposed White House event, possibly as far off as 2026. Now, that announcement, let me tell you, surprised nearly everyone in the MMA community. While it was understood he would remain at light heavyweight for some time, the clear implication was that Pereira expressed a very real, very ambitious interest in making a massive super fight happen in the heavyweight division against the former two-division champion, Jones. That sheer ambition drew an incredible amount of attention, especially considering that Jones himself had been subtly throwing hints of his own about a potential return to the cage, setting the stage for what could be an epic showdown between two of the sport's all-time greats. The mere thought of Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira ignited imaginations.
Pereira for the BMF at heavyweight. Yes, I said it. It makes sense. It makes perfect sense. You want to have an American headline in White House. You want to do it with the greatest of all time. John's not going to fight Tom Aspinall. That's fine. Alex Pereira's been calling this fight. He's a bigger name than Tom Aspinall. And what he was able to do to Magomed Ankalaev, I remember talking to John, and John was like, dude, I just want super fights. Maybe you can have Tom as a co-main against somebody, against Francis Ngannou. You know, Francis is about to become a free agent.
I like that you had that today, Henry. Every star you have are saying, yes, I want to fight. And I haven't said it yet, Dana, but you know, you want to call me, yeah, I'm down too.
The UFC's probably going to go the route of Pereira and Jones, and I'm not mad at that either.
You can imagine Chimaev definitely didn't take Pereira's laser focus on Jon Jones lightly. In fact, he fired back, absolutely doubling down on his challenge. He emphatically declared that he would be more than willing to move all the way up to heavyweight if that was truly what it took to finally make this highly anticipated fight happen. His confidence, and I mean this, never wavered for a second. He vividly pictured himself controlling Pereira on the ground, just as he had so effortlessly done to countless other opponents throughout his career. Chimaev had for months been subtly hinting that a clash with Pereira wasn't just a big fight, but the biggest fight available for him, both financially and competitively. He insisted, with absolute conviction, that everyone watching the UFC, every single fan, knew exactly how such a matchup would unfold, and his unwavering belief in his wrestling advantage against Pereira's striking remained, as always, completely unshakable.
I don't know if you're aware of this yet, but middleweight champion Khamzat Chimaev has called you out and said that congratulations, but now you guys need to finish your business. Are you aware of what business that is, and are you interested in him moving up to fight you at this stage?
O campeão peso médio te desafiou, Khamzat Chimaev, falou parabéns, mas vocês têm negócios a resolver. Que negócios são esses e te interessam?
Obrigado pelos parabéns, mas eu quero uma super luta, igual eu falei, pô, quero lutar nos pesos pesados. Então, só agradeço só pelos parabéns.
Thanks for congratulating me, but all I want is a super fight. I want to fight at heavyweight, but all I can say is thank you.
As both of these absolute titans of the sport continued to trade remarks, the rivalry between them just steadily escalated, growing more and more intense with each passing day. Chimaev, on his side, grew increasingly frustrated that the UFC brass itself seemed largely uninterested in immediately granting Grim this highly coveted Pereira fight. This perceived lack of interest from the promotion only deepened his feeling, his conviction that the Brazilian champion genuinely preferred other, perhaps safer options. And you know how it goes in combat sports, right? Things eventually drifted into surprisingly personal territory. Chimaev began throwing pointed jabs, not just at Pereira, but also at his respected coach, Glover Teixeira. This shift suddenly transformed the entire situation into far more than just a business conversation or typical fight promotion. It became something much more charged. The underlying tensions started to look less like strategic competitive hype and more like genuine deep-seated irritation. Yet, at the very same time, Chimaev's future inside the octagon began to crystallize and become remarkably clearer. He publicly revealed a very specific, meticulously built plan. One final decisive fight at middleweight before he would officially make the jump, the long-awaited move, up to light heavyweight. In his ambitious eyes, becoming a two-division champion wasn't just a personal goal. It aligned perfectly with the accelerating, undeniable trend of multi-belt fighters in the modern UFC. He confidently referenced how other celebrated champions, like the fearless Ilia Topuria and the dominant Islam Makhachev, had already successfully moved up in weight to capture gold in a second division. Chimaev wanted desperately to join that elite, exclusive group. And in his strategic assessment, Alex Pereira was the absolute ideal opponent to achieve that monumental career milestone.
Important thing, they pay good. They're gonna pay good for Alex, you know. That's why I'm pushing for that. But in my weight class, whoever. There is Imamo, there is Strickland, there is Hernandez, whoever. But I wanna, for sure, one more fight and I will go up next weight class.
However, and here's a crucial point, the UFC brass itself appeared to be taking a decidedly more cautious stance, at least based on those early insider reports. The promotion, frankly, wasn't exactly enthusiastic about immediately granting Khamzat an immediate light heavyweight title shot, especially after just winning the middleweight belt. Their clear preference was for him to defend his newly acquired middleweight championship first, which, when you think about it, makes a lot of sense, especially with that division absolutely full of deserving contenders patiently waiting their turn for a shot at gold. Among that hungry group of contenders, one name, in particular, stood out as the most deserving candidate. Mersuddin. He had steadily put together a series of truly impressive wins, including significant victories over high-caliber opponents like Khaos Williams, Chris Curtis, and even the formidable Roman Dolidze. With remarkable consistency and powerful momentum firmly behind him, Imavov became the undeniable, obvious name in the title conversation. Now, Chimaev didn't seem particularly eager to face Imavov, and largely because the two fighters were somewhat familiar with each other, having trained together in the past. Still, ever the professional, he didn't outright dismiss the possibility. He made it abundantly clear that if the UFC insisted, if they truly pushed for it, he absolutely wouldn't turn the matchup down. But in his perfect world, his ideal scenario, he wanted a fight that would undeniably lead to bigger opportunities, whether those were measured in terms of massive financial rewards or a truly impactful legacy moment in his burgeoning career.
With Imavov, because it does seem like the top one right now, you have trained with him, right?
We didn't train MMA, we just wrestled something. I was there, I just tried to help him. He's a good guy, I know him, like he knows me. If you ask me, I don't want to fight this guy because he's like, we know each other. Like a Muslim, he's from Dagestan. You know how it's Dagestan, Chechen people will be like a lot of drama, I don't like about it. But if you see once, he's never gonna say no.
As all these swirling conversations surrounding his incredibly exciting future continued to intensify, Chimaev, surprisingly, also managed to make headlines for a completely unexpected yet fascinating reason. Get this. He had recently spent some significant time with the legendary Jon Jones, arguably the greatest of all time, and had even trained extensively with the iconic fighter during a visit to his home country of Chechnya. The two exchanged friendly, yet undoubtedly intense wrestling sessions, and this unusual pairing immediately sparked even more intrigue and speculation across the MMA world about whether Chimaev might eventually learn, even permanently, from Jones during future training camps in the United States. Chimaev himself publicly expressed significant interest in that potential partnership, especially given that Jones has repeatedly and mischievously teased potential dream matchups with none other than Alex Pereira. That dynamic, the convergence of these three titans, instantly created this incredibly interesting, complex triangle involving three of the UFC's most dominant and captivating athletes, setting the stage for future drama and potential super fights.
Chechnya, they had Jon Jones over there.
Jon Jones is a legend. Chechnya was waiting for that. People are posting this wrestling. It wasn't real wrestling. I'm always respectful to my guests. It wasn't me who is trying to take him down. He started first, then when then it slowly becomes to the wrestling. Someone starts to wrestle with me, my body's going for takedowns. It wasn't my choice. I hope so one day I can train with.
Meanwhile, while fans were busy speculating about these incredible, almost fantasy matchups, Dricus du Plessis, the incredibly tough man Chimaev had just decisively defeated to win the title, stepped forward and shared his own very unique, very informed perspective. Du Plessis, having just spent a grueling 25 minutes locked inside the cage with Chimaev, made it unequivocally clear that he simply didn't believe Chimaev would fare well at all. against Alex Pereira. He acknowledged, without hesitation, the champion's undeniable dominance and skill, having felt it firsthand, but he also powerfully argued that Pereira's sheer size and raw power at light heavyweight would create an entirely different, almost insurmountable challenge. Du Plessis, from his vantage point, genuinely couldn't envision Chimaev successfully navigating through the Brazilian's devastating striking arsenal, and he firmly felt that the matchup, as a practical reality, was simply unrealistic in the near future. He even pointed out, with vivid detail, just how absolutely massive Pereira looked when he fought Magomed Ankalaev, emphasizing that competing against someone naturally built for a heavier weight class would be a profoundly different experience than fighting middleweights. To Dricus, the immense hype surrounding this potential super fight just didn't align with the stark, practical reality he saw in the octagon.
That has called out Pereira. What do you make of that?
I mean, he's always had crazy call-out. There's no way he beats Pereira, in my opinion. I think Pereira right now is one of the greatest to ever do this sport. He's a big guy. Even now at light heavyweight, he looked so big against Ankalaev. It was crazy. So, yeah, I think that's all hype.
Adding another fascinating layer to this ongoing debate, another respected fighter who weighed in with his strong opinions was Beneil Dariush. Now, unlike Du Plessis, Dariush saw the fight and the potential outcome quite differently. He confidently predicted that Chimaev would utterly overwhelm Pereira with his relentless, high-level wrestling, and he didn't hesitate for a second to express that deeply held belief. Dariush felt, with conviction, that the stylistic matchup favored Chimaev incredibly heavily, almost to the point where he worried that Pereira could end up being completely dominated on the ground. But ever the pragmatist, he also wisely recognized the monumental financial value of such a highly anticipated bout, stating that the potential earnings for both fighters, should it ever happen, could be absolutely tremendous. He emphasized that the wrestling advantage Chimaev brings to the table is unlike anything Pereira had encountered, even against a tough grappler like Ankalaev. Dariush firmly believed that if the fight ever did come to fruition, the undeniable difference in grappling ability would become strikingly obvious, and devastatingly so, once they actually engaged in the octagon.
Well, when you mentioned that Khamzat would be good at 205 this past weekend, Alex Pereira, he just won back his title from Magomed Ankalaev, and then Khamzat called out Pereira. Would you like to see that fight happen?
For Pereira, no, I'd like to see him go fight a big fight like the John Jones fight or something. I feel like he's 38. He's maybe considering retiring. I don't want him to get mauled by Khamzat. I'm just being honest. I really don't. I want to see Pereira like ride off into the sunset with a big fight, big paycheck, and that's how I'd like to see Pereira finish his career.
So does that mean you would favor Khamzat in that fight against Pereira?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, the way Khamzat wrestles is very different than the way Ankalaev wrestles. Ankalaev seems to be more of almost like a Greco style, more body locks. He doesn't really go, he doesn't commit so much. Khamzat completely commits. Khamzat completely commits, completely turns the corner. He's able to get on your back. He's able to do so much more. Ankalaev doesn't have that kind of wrestling. Don't get me wrong, Ankalaev is a good wrestler, but not like Khamzat.
Later on, another voice joined the chorus of opinions. Brendan Allen, who added his own thoughtful insights. He expressed genuine confusion about why Chimaev was so intensely focused on fighting Pereira when he had yet to even defend his newly acquired middleweight title. Allen, looking at the situation, perceived Chimaev as someone who, while he certainly talked a big game, still had a considerable amount left to prove at 18.5 pounds before he even thought about jumping weight classes. He was visibly puzzled that Chimaev seemed to be targeting a second championship belt, rather than first establishing undeniable dominance in his current division. According to Allen, gaining another title should, logically, only come after truly securing the first one, making it a foundation, not a simultaneous pursuit. He also shrewdly noted that Chimaev wasn't cutting the extreme amount of weight that Pereira once famously did at middleweight, which to Allen meant that the situations simply weren't comparable. Ultimately, Allen found Chimaev's timing unusually aggressive and didn't foresee a two-division quest happening for him in the immediate future.
What do you think of Khamzat calling out Alex Pereira and wanting to move up to 205 before he even has a title defense?
I think that's kind of like the story of Chimaev, right? Like, he just talks a lot. He gets a lot of eyes. Like,
it's not to the degree, but it's like Conor talking just to stay relative. Obviously, like Chimaev's not that bad, right? He doesn't say that much stuff and that much reckless stuff, but yeah, I don't know. I think he's got a lot of work to do in our division first, and it's not like he's a huge 85er that's cutting a lot like Alex was to get to 85 to where it's like, all right, I became a champion, I defended once, like let's just go up or whatever. So as all these fascinating opinions, strategic plans, and tantalizing possibilities continue to swirl around, the entire situation surrounding Chimaev and Pereira looks increasingly complex and layered. On one hand, Chimaev's ambitious blueprint is crystal clear. He aims to capture one more decisive win at middleweight, solidify his reign, and then, with unwavering resolve, chase down Pereira at light heavyweight and perhaps even move towards heavyweight, if that's truly what it takes to make the ultimate statement. On the other hand, Alex Pereira has his own, equally compelling plan, possibly involving a historic, legacy-defining showdown with the legendary John Jones, a fight that would undoubtedly electrify the entire combat sports world. Meanwhile, the UFC, the ultimate decision-maker, has its own set of priorities, and critically, the middleweight division is absolutely brimming with hungry, deserving contenders who rightfully expect their chance at that prestigious belt. Yet, despite all these competing interests and obstacles, the electrifying idea of Chimaev versus Pereira simply refuses to disappear from the conversation. The inherent conflict between their contrasting styles, the relentless wrestling of Chimaev against the devastating striking of Pereira, their captivating personalities, and their audacious weight class plans creates an absolutely perfect recipe for endless discussion, speculation, and anticipation among fans and pundits alike. Whether these two formidable athletes eventually meet inside the fabled cage, giving us the fight we all crave, or end up moving in entirely different directions, pursuing their own individual legacies, one thing is certain: their story continues to draw immense attention. Fans remain insatiably curious, fellow fighters keep weighing in with their predictions, and Chimaev's initial audacious claim that Pereira is running from him only continues to add powerful fuel to a rivalry that might one day turn into one of the most monumental fights the UFC could ever possibly make.